Burlingame is moderating. She's our marketing director. Eliza, take it away.
Thanks all for being here. It's a real pleasure to welcome our panelists here tonight to tell us about hockey in Aspen. I did not grow up in Aspen, but I am a hockey player. I grew up in Newport, Rhode Island in a large hockey family. My grandfather and great uncle actually started the hockey team at Providence College and started the club that I grew up playing in. So I feel like I have a pretty good position to moderate this panel, and I've also gotten to know all of our wonderful panelists and the Aspen Junior Hockey Club through my husband Andrew, who has coached in various capacities pretty much since we moved here in 2008. So I'll start by introducing our panelists, and then we'll move on to some history about the club, and we will have time for questions at the end. So if you have something you're wondering about, just save it towards the end. And I'm going to introduce our panelists here in chronological order of seniority. Who was here first? And I thought I had the order. I thought I had the order correct with my seating. But Andrew Doremus was born here in 1956, so he preceded John McBride by a few years. Andrew was born here. He grew up with lots of adventure here, but it wasn't until John arrived and started organizing the club that he really started playing organized club hockey. And it was just a group of people who loved the sport and wanted to get after it and have some competition. Andrew is a pilot here in town, and he and his wife Jean have raised 5 sons who all have had really successful and very varying hockey careers. His eldest son Ryan, did he already ditch out? He he had to go coach the in-house league, so he gets the bye. But Ryan is a current board member and coach. Andrew's son Tyler played at Skidmore, a Division III college in New York. His son Daniel played at DU and then went on to play 3 seasons as a pro in the American Junior Hockey League for the San Jose Sharks and, let's see, the Kings. Thank you. His younger twins, Jack and Willie, are in school now. Jack is playing at DU, and Willie is at University of Colorado after playing 2 years in the junior program. Please join me in welcoming Andrew. So John McBride. John grew up in the Midwest playing on outdoor ice. He went to Andover where he learned the sport and played 4 years there, and then went on to play at Princeton. He was a captain in his senior year in 1960, and during that season he also played on the, and I'm going to look it up so I don't get it wrong, the U.S. national team, which was captained by Herb Brooks, who was the coach for the 1980 Miracle on Ice team. John moved to the Midwest with his family and loved the sport and found a few friends who also loved the sport, and they came together to organize hockey in the Valley. So John's going to tell us a lot about the history here. His children have played, Jono at UVM, Peter at Dartmouth. Did Kate play?
Yes.
Yes, at Princeton, yes. Wow. And the sport's just, he said the sport's just always been fun for him. And Lori played too. Lori, John's wife, is here. Thanks so much for being here. John McBride. And then we have Evan Boenning. Evan grew up in Philadelphia. He learned to skate actually in, and I'm going to pronounce this wrong, but it is the Wissahickon rink in Philly, which is, a really well-known, we actually heard about it last week at our figure skating panelists because it is a renowned figure skating training rink. And yes, Evan learned how to skate as a figure skater and transferred to hockey and played an illustrious career. He played at the Westminster School in Connecticut for 4 years. He lettered for 2 years at UVM, his senior year as a captain. And then he decided afterwards, a few years later, to come out to Aspen with a friend for a season. Ended up staying, making his home here, marrying his wife Nancy. He has 2 children who also played. Stephen won the state championship in 2007. For the high school, and has coached for over 20 years, all different levels from the IP to the high school team, and volunteered with John on boards in all different capacities for Aspen Junior Hockey. So we're so pleased to have Evan here with us today. And then we have Elizabeth Stewart-Severy. I'm so happy to have a female on this panel, and there are very many to choose from in this town, which is a great testament to the club and the history of the club. But as most very competitive and I would say stars, young girl hockey players, Elizabeth played with the boys for most of her childhood until she joined the first girls team that the club put together, coached by John. And Elizabeth now coaches the U19 team for the club as well. She went to the University of Colorado Boulder, where she captained and presidented the club team there because school doesn't have a varsity team. She, after college, went and worked for the Colorado Avalanche in their front office, doing marketing and media kits and things like that for them. Went back to Boulder to get her master's in education, pardon me. Elizabeth has taught at the high school here and is now the environment reporter at Aspen Public Radio. Elizabeth. And last but not least, we have Shaun Hathaway. He's the current director of Aspen Junior Hockey in his 5th year. And I do need my notes for Shaun's accolades because this man he's a lifelong coach and a lifelong teacher. Shaun grew up in Colorado Springs. He went to Knox College and got a political science degree. And then he went back and got his MS in sports studies at Miami University, an MA in teaching at Colorado College, and he has a cumulative 22 years of coaching experience. He's really an expert coach and has brought great experience and enthusiasm to the junior hockey program in his tenure. So welcome, Shaun. I was going to read off all of your accomplishments as a coach, but I don't think anyone is here to hear from me. So I am going to turn the conversation to our panelists and ask them a few questions. And again, we'll end with questions from the audience. So we'll start with John's, not surprisingly, I would think, to tell us the origins of the club. How did the organization come together, and what motivated you to really organize it?
Can you hear me all right?
Yep.
I think everything was kind of accidental in the early days. We moved to Aspen in 1966, and there was a rink here at that time. It was a figure skating rink, and the manager of it was Lefty Brinkman, who was a figure skating fellow. Anyway, we got into about 1971. I talked to a friend of mine who was a teacher here. He had been the captain at Middlebury and played hockey with the local team here. I said, Hugh Marlowe was his name, we really ought to expose some of the kids in this valley to hockey. Hugh, and I had so much fun through the years playing hockey at high school level, college level, and beyond. We ought to, some of our kids, he had 3 boys, we had 2, one just about to be born then, and we ought to just expose to them, and they could learn the fundamentals. We never thought it would go anywhere because, after all, this was a ski town. So we started out with 12 kids, and that grew to 18. And we sort of thought that was that. Well, because it's such a fun sport, such a wonderful game, a team sport, you know, we have almost 600 kids in the valley now, between Glenwood and here playing hockey. So I never realized that was ever going to happen. Really, the main reason it happened is because, to my surprise, when we moved here, there were so many college players, people who migrated west, who had played hockey one place or another, and they were all willing to volunteer. So the reason it grew is because there were so many people who had the same spirit and attitude and were willing to help kids get started. So that's sort of fundamental.
Thanks. And you mentioned Lefty Brinkman, who is the figure skating professional, and he ran the rink. And when we chatted last week, and actually in our panel last week, we talked about the challenge of ice time. And with a figure skater running the rink, it sounded like the hockey teams had some tough time getting out there. So what did the sheets look like?
Well, definitely. Lefty had no use for us in the early days. He was the manager of the rink that Ruth Brown had built. And he said, well, you can have some hockey. You can start. You can have 11 at night and 5 in the morning. Great. Really.
Sounds Sounds
fun.
familiar to the men's
Yeah.
leaguers in all the A, B, and C leagues, I'm sure.
So we went to Ruth Brown, we formed a little group and said, Ruth, can you help us out? She said, I can't, because Lefty's running the rink. But we said, well, what if we were to buy in with you into the rink? And she said, well, then that would be a little different, you'd have a little more say. And we said, well, we had, I don't know if you remember, that Bill Tharp and Charlie Cole and David Baxter and myself, we put together a group, said, well, let's make a run at it. We'll talk to Ruth Brown, and could there any possible way we could buy the rink and then get some better times? This was in 73 or 4. And Ruth said, well, that is a possibility, but I want to stay in and be a partner with you guys. Okay. So we went to the bank, First National Bank, and sat down with a new banker there by the name of Howie Mallory. And said, Howie, we want to buy the rink. Ruth put a price on it of about $250,000. We need a big loan. At that time, Ruth was the only one that had the money, and everybody else was struggling one way or another. And Howie said, well, I would consider it. And as he sat there trying to be sort of mature and bankerly, he said, now how do you gentlemen think you're going to be able to pay this loan back? And we said, in the normal fashion. He said, what's that? We said, foreclosure. Anyway, he made the deal. And we bought the rink, and about 10 years later gave it to the city. So that made a big difference. And we got some pretty good times there.
Thanks, John. We did a little bit of research. Ruthie Brown opened the rink as a public facility. There were hardly any streetlights, and she wanted a hockey rink in 1967. And then it was mid sort of 60s, 70s that the group all decided to buy it. And then towards 1980, they gave it back to the city. And we think that's when it was renamed the Aspen Ice Garden, and certain renovations came about. But there's some fun facts about the Aspen Ice Garden, which is such a beloved institution still today. It's an oddly shaped sheet, not your typical size of ice. And apparently there are no right angles in the entire building, which is really interesting from a building perspective. And the garden was open for year-round ice until the Lewis Arena was constructed in 2000. So it was really a mainstay. When it opened, it was the only indoor ice on the western slope. So you guys were at the forefront, for sure, of organized hockey in the West. Thank you, John. So, Andrew, you guys raised 5 boys here, and we were just talking about that, and you have another Doremus boy on the way. A grandson, yeah. What did it mean to you after growing up and having the program in its origin to have it for your children and have this well-established group as a kind of foundation for these careers in sports that your boys have had?
You know, it sort of starts when you play in the beginning as a kid, and then we played with, as I grew up, all the guys I played with were, as John said, were ex-college players. And we had Evan and Danny Harris and and Timmy Cottrell and all these great players we learned from. And they came from a real base of what hockey's about. It's all about sharing and giving back and teaching. And so I played here, and then our boys started playing, and gosh, they're all still playing. And it gave them the platform to learn and give back. For instance, like you said, Ryan went through the whole program. Now he's on the board, he's coaching. I was fortunate enough, John was my first coach, along with Pete Whitmore, who came here, and Pete played like for DU, and it was 63 or 4, the first national championship. So we had really high level guys that came here, and then I kept playing, and then I ended up giving back. I ended up coaching John's son, Jonna, when he was at Pee Wee Urbana. He was hell on wheels then. And then our guys started playing. And the way the program developed and grows is like what Shaun is doing. It gives the guys the ability to go to somewhere they couldn't before. I mean, we're very fortunate. Our guys all did really well. You know, we had 3 that played collegiate hockey, 1 that played professional hockey. And without the platform of junior hockey, it wouldn't have happened. And they all give back. I mean, they're all still playing together. Tyler and Dan play in San Francisco. Ryan plays here. Jack is playing at DU. Willie plays at CU. And when they come up and they get to play with the, they lower themselves and come and play with the old guys. And, we really get to see what gentlemen and what young men they've become. And I think, everybody that's sitting out here that plays knows, gosh, the guys we play with, they all have our back when we're on the ice, off the ice, wherever we are. And we all have a real solid group in town. And I think it started from the solid group, and now it grows, and we have collegiate players coming back and helping. We have guys that coach, that care, and it's still volunteer mainly. Shaun has to get these guys, sure there's some enticement, but they do it for the love of the game, and watch the kids grow. And the girls program grew from nothing. One girl that played high school hockey with all the boys, and now what do we have? 50, 60 girls probably? More than that now. So it's, for the little guys here like this, it's a platform. The question always came up, are we a ski town with a hockey problem or a hockey town with a ski problem?
That was going to be my segue for Evan, and that was perfect. You really touched on it in that in this community, there's a lot of people who just love the sport and want to give back to the sport. And Evan, I wonder, what brought you to Aspen, first of all? Was it the hockey, or was it the skiing, or something else? And why do you think in this valley it's caught on so well and nurtured this really incredible program that it is today?
It's a very interesting question. I graduated in '71, and Vietnam War was scaling down a bit then. Going through college, while you were in college, we were all 1A. And that meant if you flunked out, decided to drop out, 2 weeks later, you were going to get a little call from the selective service and you would be drafted. So the war was winding down. And I had a Philadelphia friend who got in a little bit of trouble at DU and needed to get off of probation. And for actually the police planting drugs in his place. Not that they weren't doing it, but so he said, would you like to take a little road trip out west? And I said, well, what do you mean? He said, well, we'll go to Denver, but we'll go ski. I said, yeah, I'll do a little skiing, not much, but might be fun. So we start coming out here, but I had a friend, Tim Cottrell, that I met in 1963 at
Tim's
Westminster.
here tonight. Tim, raise your hand. Hi, Tim.
Who's next to poor Lori. But I met in 1963, and we've literally been together for 55 years, so to speak. School, college, and so I knew he was here. So I called him up, and he said, yes, they have hockey out here, because I was playing a little bit in the Philadelphia League back there. So we pack up, and I bring a duffel bag of clothes and my full hockey bag. And I didn't even know if I had skis. They were useless because they were Vermont ice skis. So we came out, and I guess I spent 6 months here, and right off the bat, as Tim and I were talking, we started skating with the Aspen Leaf in the adult program. They were all college hockey players, but what they really needed was an infusion of the East Coast people, because they all had this wicked attitude about themselves. And that needed to stop. So we helped. And I just wanted to clear that up. They really needed a change. So anyway, I'm here, but I fell in love with Aspen because the other place that I wanted to stay was Newport, Rhode Island, in Jamestown. But there wasn't enough of the season. And I came out here, and Tim helped me get the horrible jobs that he had of cleaning the Hotel Jerome bar every morning in the 2 dirtiest bathrooms in town. And then we went up to Leon Uris's house in the afternoon. He was a famous author. No, he didn't ask us to read his scripts. He asked us to do the housework, take the dogs for a run, stuff like that. I absolutely fell in love with Aspen.
And a big part of that was the hockey community for you.
Was the hockey community.
And it's important to note, I think, that the junior hockey program grew alongside the adults and the women's hockey program. The Mother Puckers and the Aspen Leafs have been in competition for decades, and it's not just the kids who get to luckily play hockey here in town. And those players in the adult programs are often the coaches, which is so special, I think. And that leads me to Elizabeth. And as I mentioned, like many girl players, she started playing with the boys. And I personally didn't start playing until the first girls team started in my town. But my sister played with the boys, and it's a really important milestone, I think. But then, Elizabeth, tell us the difference. What are the benefits or the downfalls of being on an all-boys, or playing with the boys and then being on an all-girls team as you get older, and having the outlets like the Olympics, which the girls are playing so well right now. Go Team USA. But what were the differences in your experience?
When I didn't really know any different from playing with boys when I was growing up. My older brother played. My parents, I think there were 6 of us, and I think my parents were like, in the summers there was all these sports, in the winter you can go learn how to skate. and so we all learned how to skate on figure skates, and I had no interest in figure skating. And my older brother played, so I played on his team. All of my friends growing up were boys anyway, so it just seemed, I don't think I realized that it was unusual until I was 10 when the first girls team started, and that was John French and John McBride and Pete coaching. It was a U19 team, and I think I was 10.
Yes, note the age difference there.
So that was actually scary.
I'm sure.
I was pretty, I mean, everybody was a lot older than me, and I didn't really know what to do, but I just loved hockey. We went to Dallas. That was the closest team was in Dallas, and it was my first exposure to an airplane, and it was just like a big experience as a kid. When I was 12, that same U19 team became a AAA, like a Tier 1 team, and we went to nationals that year and just got annihilated. But it was at Disneyland, so everybody had a great time anyway. I think we lost to Shattuck St. Mary's like 11-0.
We have 2 Shattuck St. Mary's alum in the house, at least 2 that I know of.
But it was a really cool time for women's hockey. A couple years later, we started playing in a league out of Chicago and played against Shattuck quite a bit, and they had Olympians on the team. Like I got to play against Olympians as a high schooler, middle schooler, and it was just a cool time. Like the 98 Olympics, I think, generated a lot of interest here, and I started seeing a lot more girls playing and interested in playing. The difference that I notice now, so I still play like predominantly with the men on Monday nights, and then with the Mother Puckers also, and the Mother Puckers are better passers.
We've talked about this a lot in talking about the women's Olympic team, and I stand by that women have to be more skilled than men because they can't hit. So you have to be able to maneuver around people without that physical presence. And I see it still today, but that's no surprise. The Mother Puckers are great passers. Thanks, Elizabeth. As a coach of an all-girls team, do you think that makes a difference? Do you think, especially at the age, the U19 age, when things are definitely different for boys and girls, is it important to have an all-girls program?
Yeah, I think it is. I don't know that I'm the expert on this. I'm not.
Do any of your players play with the boys still?
No. None of them are overlapping. So there are a few girls who practice with the boys who play on higher level girls teams. When I played on 3 teams. I played on 3 teams, and I don't know. It was fun to have both. Like I played with Anderson Ryan all the way through high school, and now I think there is a little bit more of a separation that certainly happens younger. I'm sure that John can comment on what it was like to coach that first girls team. I mean, I noticed a real difference in the practices. Like, it's a lot more social. The girls' practices are a lot more social. We actually do some combined practices or scrimmages every once in a while with the boys' high school team, and it's just a funny mix to see them. Like, the differences, I think being able to play a variety of types of hockey is super helpful, and I feel like I'm in Jersey at the back there. Speaks to this too, but I think it's helpful for the boys to have to play with girls to work on some of those skills, and like it's a little bit of a different game, and it certainly makes the girls skate a little bit faster and giggle a little bit more when they play with the boys. So thank you.
John, if you'd like to comment at all about that kind of combined, and was the girls team always combined age, or was there always a 10-year-old playing with the 17-year-olds?
That I wasn't aware of too much, but there were some differences that I became aware of coaching the girls, and that was that they brought their personal issues from school to the rink. I was always surprised. I mean,
it's not just the rink; they go everywhere.
I can remember struck me as very odd. Boys will have differences and get angry at each other and call each other names, but they'd get on the rink and they were the same team and they were all playing together. The girls I noticed sometimes, I asked them, well, why didn't you pass to Elizabeth? She was right in front, wide open. And, well, she wasn't nice to
This
you.
never happened. That never happened.
But I must say, I don't know if any of you saw it, but I saw the first two periods of the U.S. girls playing the Russians. My gosh, they're good. They could beat any of the boys' teams, no doubt about it. They played really well, and it's a thrill for me to see girls get so good and enjoy the game so much. It's wonderful.
Thanks to you both. So Shaun, hockey has changed a lot in this country over the decades since these guys started the first junior hockey program. And it's now part of a national governing body almost that has a lot of different standards and rules. And what is that like? What has that transformation, as you've seen over your 20 years coaching, looked like? And are you happy with it?
Yeah, it's really been changes based on research, scientific research. Obviously, in the last 20 years, and I got a graduate degree in 2000, and a lot of these principles we were studying and working on, and the idea of what does it take to develop an athlete. For a long-term perspective, what is age-appropriate training? What you should be doing for a 6-year-old isn't the same for a 10-year-old, isn't the same for a 14, and on and on. And so that research has really caught up to the sport. And USA Hockey embraced it about 7 years ago. They created the American Development Model. They worked with the Finnish Ice Hockey Association to kind of develop that model, and the Finns were really leading the way in terms of how do we train, how do we ensure that we're providing all the skill sets needed so that players can have success. And a lot of that movement was based on the fact that there weren't a lot of NHL draft picks coming out of the United States. And so USA Hockey really made a push to try to step back and say, how do we make the game better? And so they applied these techniques that were coming out of the classrooms and research, and created the American Development Model, which most of the organizations throughout the United States have embraced. And it's based on the individual as opposed to winning at young ages. It's more based on skill development. It's based on when players can achieve specific skills at certain ages, and when you become a certain age, you can't teach that skill anymore. And if anybody's, I always laugh when I explain it in my coaching education classes that my father was a professor for 45 years at Colorado College, and when he started teaching there, he started playing hockey. And he played for, out of his 45 years, he probably played for 38, 39 of those years, and he was still the same horrible skater on day one that he was on the last day that he quit skating. He was never able to develop the proper technique, to develop the stride to have success, and those are done at the young ages. And really when kids reach 12, 13, get 14, 15 years old, that 13, 14, 15-year-old can't learn those skills that are going to be necessary potentially to give them the continued success down the road. So USA Hockey's embraced it. We've certainly embraced it, and we've embraced it kind of on a whole new level with a partnership with the Finnish Ice Hockey Association.
Yeah, tell us about that. Alexi is here tonight. Alexi, raise your hand. A lot of you probably know about this partnership, but Shaun, tell us how this came about and what you think it brings to the club.
Yeah, we were extremely fortunate. We did a fundraiser a couple years ago, and we're a very generous donor. Say here's a donation. Do something special. I never forget the quote, don't squander my money. And so we looked outside the box on what can we do to really benefit this program, and I got a lot of connections with the national governing body back in Colorado Springs, and we sat down with some of the league managers there, and we talked about, well, what can we do to make this program a world-class program. It's a world-class town, and so timing was everything. I ended up contacting a gentleman in Finland who at the time had just been hired to lead all of youth hockey for the entire country. At the time he was only running 2 of the 9 regions in Finland, and I didn't know it, that he had taken this position. This was going to be a new position. So I called him and I said, we've got an opportunity to bring you over here for a 6-month sabbatical. Kind of tried to learn from Finland, build on what we're doing from the U.S. model, and align our programs to some extent. Very similar communities, Nordic communities, small communities, multi-sport athletes, and a lot of the challenges you see in the city didn't exist here. And he agreed to do it, so he was over here last year for 6 months. We hit it off, became extremely close friends, and when he left, he offered a 10-year partnership with the Finnish Ice Hockey Association and Aspen Junior Hockey. And so we have this partnership with FIHA, so we get resources from them. I stay in touch with this gentleman, on a bi-weekly basis. We stay in touch, and then as part of that as well, we have a partnership with Virmaki University in Finland, which is the leading university for sports studies, sports science, and coaching. And so for the next 10 years, we are the house of students from Virmaki who are going through a 4-year degree program that have to do a 6-month practical experience. And so these students are now excited to come to Aspen and do a practical experience here. So Alexi was the first student, and we hired a new student for next year to come over, and we hope to continue this down the road, and hopefully those will all be on 10 years. But it's really kind of a very interesting and unprecedented thing for an organization in the United States. We're the only one in North America that's doing this, so it's pretty exciting.
Very good. Thank you. I wanted to go back a few decades. Thanks, Shaun. A really unique partnership that brought so much value to the program, and I want to go back a few decades to another really unique partnership that, John, hopefully you could tell us a little about, the Bob Johnson Hockey Camp. So Bob Johnson was Mike Johnson, who was on the 1980. Mark, thank you. I knew that wasn't right. The father of Mark Johnson was on the 1980 Miracle team and has run a camp here, I think, since 1964 when it was the rink was open.
64, 65, yeah, they celebrated their 50 years a couple years ago.
Well, I can tell you, it was not part of Aspen Junior Hockey, but many of our kids went there, and they always prioritized it. Did you attend?
Yeah, oh yeah, I went every.
Well, you guys should talk about it, but it was a wonderful program that helped grow hockey in this town as well. And Bob Johnson, Badger Bob, coach at the University of Wisconsin, loved Aspen, and then his son Mark took over, so it's been a real pleasure to talk about it.
Yeah, Elizabeth, if you'd love to talk to us about it, and you want to stand up and turn around, it still lives. Thank you. What's your name?
Wyatt.
Thank you, Wyatt.
I think Bob Johnson Hockey School was why there's a huge contingent of Pittsburgh Penguins fans in Aspen. We watched that 91 Stanley Cup playoff video on repeat. At least mine is. By the time I got there, we could do that. It was like this great week in the summer where, I didn't play a ton of hockey in the summer. It was still, I think now a lot of kids focus more on sports, but summer was not hockey time for me, except for that week or 2 weeks of Bob Johnson Hockey School. And everybody we played, almost everybody I played with went at some point. It was just like you were on the ice 3 times a week. You knew the same coaches year after year after year. Half of the family lives in Colorado Springs. Right? Do I live in the Springs? So you would see them every once in a while at games in the Springs, and it just became kind of a cool little hockey community that happened.
That's great. That's great, thank you. So we are a small little town up in the mountains. We're not a big metropolis. We don't have a lot of access to the kind of large market sports support that a place like Denver would have, or even where I grew up in New England that had hockey summer camps coming out their ears, and that was the last thing I wanted to do in the summer. But because of that, and Andrew and Shaun, this is sort of for you, what does the path look like for someone who wants to take hockey far? Obviously, the resources here as a kid are really great, but when they hit a certain point, and Shaun, you talked about it, you kind of outgrow being able to teach them anymore. And I think your sons have gone through that a little bit, and maybe you guys could talk about what the path looks like for a hockey player that wants to make it in the NHL. Today.
Today? Oh gosh.
It's tough.
It's, you have to want it more than anything else in the world. And starting here in the town like this is a great benefit because you get more care, more vision, more training, I think. And then the club it gave our kids the ability and the support to go to that next step, which is playing AAA. And so they all played AAA down in Denver.
And is that during high school, or
yeah, it was during high school. They left early. They left. 2 of them left as seniors, and Jack and Willie left as juniors. And the reason Jack and Willie left early is their birth years are 97. And as you guys know, birth years are all very important based on hockey. And 97 happens to be a very talented birth year. For instance, Troy Terry, who's playing in the Olympics, plays for DU. He's a 97, just as an example. So it's interesting based on when you're born, on how your level of competition is going to be with your peers. But being in the program here, being a multiple sport athlete, I think, is an advantage for these guys because our guys all did football, lacrosse, baseball, skiing, soccer. They did multiple different things when they were younger. And I've seen other hockey players that our boys have run into that just played hockey, and they're very one-dimensional. They're not as creative, they're not as ability to change. So it is an advantage, but then the next step is nothing but dedication and hard work, and the parents a lot of road time and being there. And then they still come back and use Shaun and the other coaches as resources. What do you think? Is this okay? What about this team? And in a bigger organization, I don't think it's as tight-knit, so it's good for them.
That's great. Shaun, in your experience, do you see kids prioritizing college like I know that the Doremus boys have, or is it the juniors program where they're going all over the country to play in a town that they've never seen? What's it look like?
Well, I mean, Andrew's right. I mean, you have to, first of all, want it. And I think part of the model that we're providing these kids and what has been provided since its inception is again, multiple sport athletes and the correct training and having fun and the character development. And then when these kids turn 16, 17 years old, if they've learned the skills and they have the self-drive and the motivation and they understand what it really takes, the sacrifices that it takes to train at such a high level, those kids have a shot. And I think one of the problems in youth hockey is parents have kind of taken over and provided that piece too young. My child, if he's not playing AAA when he's 12, he doesn't have a shot. If he's not, if we don't send him off by the time he's 13, his career's over. And it's kind of hurting our game a little bit. And especially in smaller communities, when we lose athletes at a young age, it's pretty detrimental. At the end of the day, these players need to understand the basic skills, but then there's a lot of life pieces to go with it. And I've been fortunate to coach at Division I, Junior A, Midget AAA levels. I've had a couple NHL kids, Olympians, and Division I athletes, and what sets them aside from all the other players that I've coached really is when they turn 16, 17, 18 years old, it is their drive, and it becomes where it's not what the coach is telling them, what the parents are telling them, but it's what they're doing on their own time, working out 3-4 hours a day, and so that really becomes the difference between those that make it and those that don't, and it's not really how much you throw at them at a young age. determines that. And there's good examples, even in Finland, the United States, countless examples of 11, 12, 13-year-old skaters that are house league at best and became NHL players because they just figured it out when they got older, when the time was ready. And in hockey, it's a lot different than any other sport. The average college freshman at the Division III and the Division I level is 20 years old. And so you have to go play junior hockey after high school. So there is that path, and obviously it's tiered, and specific leagues will get you to specific places. But yeah, it really is about the effort and hard work, and I know Andrew's boys developed that passion and had that inner drive and that self-motivation, and I know that if you weren't standing over them saying, you need this, they wanted it, and that's really the difference this day and age.
Just support them.
Yeah, you just need to support them, and if they have that dream, let them dream. And obviously, parents have to kind of be able to let go of that a little bit and provide the kids the ownership, and when they become mature enough to understand what that means, there's the separation.
And tell us about the junior hockey program that you founded here. It's go ahead.
Yeah, I mean, we when I was up here, we were looking at ways to try to keep players here, have a more elite opportunity, and I was fortunate enough to be working with USA Hockey prior to my arrival in Aspen. It was kind of a pipe dream at the time, but I founded the Rocky Mountain Junior Hockey League and was able to garner partners to build that. And, Aspen was a part of it up until this last season, just for financial reasons and whatnot. We stepped out of it. So the team's in dormancy this year, and but there's teams in Steamboat, Breckenridge, Colorado Springs, Monument, and Denver that are operating this league, and it's a Tier 3 junior league. It's for postgraduate players and players that are wanting to have more, and it's not for every community, and obviously through Aspen Junior Hockey wasn't necessarily the right fit. Whether it comes back to Aspen under a different ownership group or however that looks is kind of yet to be seen. But the idea was Colorado has grown so much and is advanced. I mean, we used to be a non-traditional hockey area, and now we've got players like Troy Terry, born and raised in Denver, going to DU playing on the Olympics, and we've got a lot of NHL kids playing from Colorado. And so Colorado's now become sort of a hockey hotbed. We're on par with some of the other states that have been traditionally the top states. There's a massive AAA program in the Front Range, and so this league was sort of the next step for the state, and I was proud to be a part of it here. And but I also, on the flip side, think it's my focus and the attention needs to be on the young kids, because that's really what we're here to do. And but it's certainly an avenue that kids can look at.
Great, thank you. Evan, your son, like I mentioned, won the state championships in 2007. How do you view the relationship with the club and then the high school? Obviously, we have a men's or a boys high school team. The coach is here tonight, Drew. Raise your hand, Drew. How does that transition go? What does it mean for a player to play on a high school team and not, have that lettering and the relationship between the high school and the club? How does it look?
Well, I think the relationship looks very good now. I think to begin with, it took us a while to get going on it. But I think a lot of us who came from a high school situation, be it a boarding school or a high school who played that way, that's when all your friends come out to see and watch you. And so what we found with the high school, once we got over this midget stuff, which was very front range, which was very year-round, this is what we do. Well, we got into the high school league, and I think it is so successful. And to go to Drew's games and watch, and I coached high school 82 to 85 here, and it means a lot. Their friends come and watch them. So I think that the transition was good. I think the boys lettering and girls lettering is so important. And by the way, when John and I were coaching the Boenning team, 77, 78, we had two of the best girl skaters on our team. We had Beth Madsen, whose mom's here, and we had Lori Strang. And of course, we lost them to the U.S. ski team.
And,
But-
and Beth will be on our Olympians
Yeah.
panel on March 6th as she's a skier and a hockey player.
Yeah, I mean, that's how cool it was. And we were, then you get the Maggie Melbergs and people like that that were all with the club, and then we're out with the high school. High school is important to me. And what I really liked seeing this year was the JV team. And I went to a couple JV games, and I was so impressed with the hockey. And that filled the gap for that 9th, 10th grader. You know, not every 9th grader is going to pop to the varsity or 10th grade. So we finally found another division, which is gaining momentum, that really feels a need for that age group and that development group. So I'm all for the high school hockey. I think it's wonderful.
Great community spirit.
Oh yeah, and when the boys are there, boy, they do get down on that other team's goalie, though. I gotta tell you. And I come up to my son, and I said, Steven, this is just Bush League. And he says, Dad, this is nothing compared to what they used to do to us down in Denver. And he stood there and said, I gotta tell you, Dad, I really like it, so let them do it. So,
Let them play.
let them play.
Drew, do you have any girls on your team right now? JV or varsity? No.
Sort of.
Sort of. Okay. Well, they're playing on Elizabeth's team instead.
There are actually a couple who are practicing and playing with the JV team and playing on teams out of Denver, AAA teams out of Denver, and our goalie, Sonia Benson, is kind of playing both JV and girls. And I agree with Evan. I think the high school, like being able to play for your school is important. It's something we've talked about a lot at the girls level. This is the first year that the girls are wearing the high school jerseys.
Skier jerseys.
Yeah.
Very nice.
We're not there in Colorado for women's hockey at all yet. I think they need 8 or 12 teams to commit to form a new high school sport, and we have between 6 and 8, depending on the year, that might be interested in playing.
Interesting. So the players are there, but just maybe not playing for their schools. They're playing for travel teams. The elite. Tell us about the elite girls team that Beth is coaching here in the Rockies.
We were fortunate this off season. It's one of the things that I've wanted to do is to try to create true equality between the boys and the girls up here. So we started a AA program. I've been working with the leaders in the state this last off season, and we started all of the AAA programs dropped their teams, and we created one Team Colorado AAA team at the 19 and one team at the 16 division. And we convinced all these other programs, let's start a AA league. So let's not send girls to Denver when they're not ready. There's a couple here in Aspen that are. But let's try to have a little more common sense approach to elite hockey for the girls. And so Aspen serves as the flagship program for the AA, the program which feeds the elite tier 1 AAA programs. So we had a tryout this last fall, and we had over 55 girls in attendance from all over the mountain communities, and we were able to start a supplemental AA team at the 19, 16, and 14 levels. Last year we had the 14s only, and that team from Aspen, which was a compilation of some other teams from Aspen and Steamboat and Breckenridgevale, went to the national tournament. First time in history that we had a team at that age level go to the national tournament. And this year we've got 3 teams, 16, 19, 14, 16, and 19 AA team. Sonia plays on the 19 AA team as a goaltender, and many of our Aspen girls play on either the 14, 16, and 19 AA team. And all 3 are legitimate. The 16 and 19s have, I would say, more than an 80% chance of making it all the way to nationals again this year, so we could end up with 2 teams at the national tournament. So it's exciting for the mountain girls. We're a lot more developed than the Front Range. Unfortunately, the Front Range has remained very much boys-centered. And there's only actually 2 organizations in the entire Colorado Springs, Denver, Fort Collins area that support girls hockey in terms of, so girls are forced to play boys up until high school ages. And so we're very fortunate in the mountains, and we're extremely lucky here in Aspen to be kind of on the forefront of the development and be serving these girls the way they are. And now Beth is not only coaching on the 18 team for Aspen, she's also the head coach for the 19AA team. So
She coaches the Historical Society CEO, Kelly Murphy. Her niece is on Beth's team, and she lives in Breckenridge. So it's really a regional... Captain! Yeah, but definitely a regional effort, and really exciting to see that Aspen is sort of leading that charge. One more question for anyone that would like to answer, and then I have a final question for each of you. But I think each of you have sat on the Aspen Historical Society, or I'm sorry, the Aspen Junior Hockey Board. And how has the organization as a nonprofit been able to provide access to kids from any walk of life to play in the program? It's obviously been a huge volunteer effort, but also supported by donors, and it comes from the top down to say anybody can play. How has the club achieved that?
Let me just put one side note into that. I did serve on the board for 4 or 5 years, and I was late to a meeting, and as I walked in, everyone congratulated me because I was the new member of the Sterling Cup Classic. And I go, what's that? He said, well, that's this new thing we're going to raise money for, and we're going to have a golf tournament. And I said, well, I don't play golf, so I don't think I'm the right one. And they all turned around and they said, you're the perfect person for it.
That's what you get for being late.
For the grill. For 16 years, we have been raising money, and our money goes to the general, but right into scholarship. So what we're doing is reaching out. No one gets turned down to play hockey at the club. So there's always a means of financing, giving, and all of that. And we begin getting kids into the club at that early learn to skate free day. And Lex Tarumias isn't there, but I had his children come in, and Vassar's still playing in our league. I just think that no one's ever been turned down, no one will be turned down. We will find the money, we will find the way, and that's what makes our program strong and lasting.
It's really impressive. John, did you ever think that this would be the result of your efforts and just passion for hockey?
I guess what makes me happiest is that from my own experience, hockey was always a joy. Through 8th grade, we were skating all the time on ponds, and then learning the game at a good prep school, and then playing in college, and afterwards. It was always, the glue that made it so great for me was the fun. I mean, I probably played 10 other sports, but nothing was as fun as hockey. Maybe that's because there are just 5 skaters out there as opposed to 11 soccer players or football players or what have you. But everybody's important and a part of a small team. And I think we should never lose sight of the fact we're not here to build players that go to the NHL. It's really about a base of having a really enjoyable, fun experience. And of course, there's a regimen to it and what have you. But I think that's what has impressed me the most. The fun I had, and I'm sure you guys had too, you see it in these kids. And the reason it's fun is because, and affordable, is because, first of all, there's so many volunteer coaches. And the city has always treated us well in Aspen, as far as I started. It's going up, I know, but we used to have a work program where parents would say, well, if you get one of your kids in need of money to join the hockey program, if he comes over once a week and stacks firewood, we'll pay half his tuition. We had a lot of that in the old days. So the whole community's been behind it, but most of all, there's this wonderful spirit of enjoyment. You probably felt it yourself.
I do. I said I played hockey. I played all through high school and then switched to lacrosse, and I coach lacrosse here, but hockey is still my favorite sport to play and to watch, and it's so evident in preparing for this panel that it's, you know, on the backs and the spirit of volunteers that this club has come about and continues to. Shaun, I know you rely heavily, even still, on coach volunteers, which is not every community can pull that off. So it's a testament to all of you, even who are here. Thank you for your spirit. So we're going to wrap up soon. I'm going to ask each panelist one more question. And I also want to ask raise your hand if you play hockey now. I know we have some kids in the audience. We've got a lot of hockey playing kids, including two of my cousins, which I'm really excited to have here. I want to ask you, a few of you guys, what's your favorite thing about hockey? I'll start with Liam, because he's my blood, I can pick on him. What's your favorite thing about hockey?
I have no idea.
Liam told me he has a good friend who's on his team who's a girl, and he's got a lot of fun buddies on the team. So maybe that's your favorite thing? All right. What about you, Wyatt?
Hanging out with my friends and like scoring goals.
What's your favorite?
Magnus
What's your favorite?
is hanging out with Wyatt.
Great answer, Magnus. What about you? Do you play? Yeah. What's your name?
Lisa.
And what's your favorite?
Just being on the ice and just hanging out with my friends.
Being on the ice. I was hoping someone would say that. That's such a unique thing for this sport, isn't it? I love being on the ice too. Well, thank you guys, and thanks for coming today. And now I'm just going to ask each of our presenters, what are you most excited for with the Olympics? I think I might know the answer for some of them. John?
Well, my oldest son is a U.S. downhill and Super G coach. And of course, we hope he does well and nobody gets hurt and he has a good experience. I would like just to point out that wherever he's gone as a World Cup coach, be it in Europe, and I don't know about Korea, he's had all the racers have a hockey bag and a stick. And for recreation, wherever they are, and I've played with them, they go out after their day and play pickup hockey, sometimes with the Swiss or the Austrians. That's a tribute to what fun the sport is.
That's wonderful. Thank you so much, John.
Yeah.
Andrew?
Me? Oh, I want to see the men's Olympic team win gold, the hockey team. We have friends on the team, and Jack's got teammates, so.
Yeah, this is a change in this Olympics that it's all amateurs on the men's team. A shift. It's been NHL players for many years. That must be fun for you.
There's guys from the AHL, and so there are guys that are getting paid to play, but no NHL players. So it'll be different.
Unless they're retired. Oldest U.S. Olympian is a retired NHL player.
There you go.
Well, I'm excited for the 6 boys and girls from Aspen who are there and the rest of the Colorado contingency. I can't wait to see what Michaela does tonight. I hope she gets to ski tonight. And down deep, I want to see that USA men's hockey kick a little bit and change the attitudes of people over there. To me, it's very exciting not to have the NHL a part of it. And I think that's what we need to do with a lot of our sports, is not have the paid like the basketball or the hockey or stuff like that. It pulls away from it, and I would carry that one step further to the America's Cup sailing races, where if you're an American, if you're going to race on an American boat, you should be an American. And if anyone knows that, the Kirby family does. No more of these other foreigners sitting on the American boats, and vice versa.
Evan is referring to one of my cousins, who is America's Cup sailor, who's the only American.
Also, I think some of the Russian players are professional. So, is it Pavel Datsuk? I think he's...
Yeah.
I think that the league
only...
said that you could go play for your country if you wanted to, but that the U.S. players that were professional, the U.S. team was not going to field professional. I think.
Nobody under an NHL contract is allowed to play, so these guys are
He can
playing
play pro in Russia, it's similar to the American Hockey League here, but no NHL like Shaun.
Okay.
Doesn't mean he's not any good, he's still pretty good.
Every Winter Olympics, I wonder what calling I missed.
Same.
And this year I think it's speed skating. Why didn't you do that?
That's funny.
So I think it's so cool to watch. John and I were just talking about watching the women's hockey. I love watching the U.S. women's team play Canada. We'd love to see them win. I just think it's so cool. Thanks.
Elizabeth could have played on that team, and she has a slap shot as good as any of them.
I couldn't have played on that team. That's very nice of you to say. I played against some of them. There was like that moment, you know. Do you
98.
remember that? We played Julie Chu in that semifinal game and almost won. I love to live in the past.
That was a big win, though. That was a big win here for the women's hockey
Yeah.
team. Shaun?
Well, I'm excited obviously about the hockey, but even more special is I've spent the last 2 games. Last night, Alexi was knocking on my door at 12:30 a.m. I was up and opening the door so that we could watch the Canadians play the Finnish women's game. His girlfriend is Petra, is playing on the women's Olympic team this year. So we were up on the phone Saturday night when the U.S. played the Finns, and we were up last night late until 3 in the morning watching hockey. And so it's been exciting. There's a little bit of a personal connection with Alexi and his girlfriend, and she's a phenomenal player. I've got a former player from Vail that's played professional hockey in South Korea for the last 6 years and got Korean citizenship. Quite a story. He's on the South Korean national men's team this year, played test lead, and so I'm going to get to watch him. And then, yeah, to have the non-NHL, NHL players. Troy Terry was a young man that we used to coach at the select camps for the Rocky Mountain District, and watched him mature into. So just the stories. I think the personal connections, and to see these are kids again. Yeah, some of these guys are pro players in Europe and in the AHL, but still they're kids that are living a dream. And I guess the last thing I'd say is I was fortunate and saddened a couple weeks ago. Went back to Jim Johansson's funeral, who was an executive at USA Hockey, who was responsible for putting together the national team, and passed away suddenly in his sleep. And we went to his services, and I was sitting next to Tony Renato, who's a U.S. coach, and at his service, and listening to the emotion that they've carried with them to South Korea this year, to watch Tony and his tears, and to see the heaviness that he's carrying over there. I think that's probably, for me, the most impactful thing for the Olympics is really to support Team USA. And Jimmy's last duty before he passed away was to call all these players and to tell them, your dream just came true. You never thought you'd ever play in the Olympics, and here you go. And so I hope they can win one, as they say, for JJ, and the U.S. can celebrate a gold medal in his memory. So.
Thanks, Shaun. And you said it's the Olympics for me are all about the stories and the challenges that all these athletes go through to get to that pinnacle of their sport. And that's what this whole series is about. We're celebrating sports in the spirit of the Olympics. And thank you all for sharing your highlights. We are also looking forward to those. And on March 6th, we will be having Aspen's Olympians in our final panel of this series. Here at the Wheeler, it'll be in the theater, and hearing from all of those athletes how they, what their road was like as a youth athlete to get to the Olympics. Now we'll start with our audience questions. A quick round of applause for our panelists. We'll start with Lori.
Hi, I'm John's wife. He's the one that named the Mother Brothers. We were a bunch of women with little tiny kids, and we didn't quite know what to do with ourselves. So we said, why don't you start a hockey team? Martha's here, so is Karen, and Sally Cole's dog, Pooh Bear, was Peter McBride's babysitter. We never knew where they were. Anyway, I have to tell you something very funny happened. We were playing against the Peewees, who, believe it or not, were beating us. And suddenly, the Zamboni came out, cleared the ice, and out of nowhere came this creature with an old man's face on, my bed jacket, and in a long plaid skirt, scored 5 goals, and we won.
That's no go.
Now, the next story you cannot get out of here without hearing about the movie.
Lori, we should have had you on the panel with
The
us.
movie Slapshot. Well, our own little Timmy Cottrell delighted us one night after an Aspen Leaf game, and out he came with not a stitch on except his skates.
And a goalie mask.
And a goalie mask.
Never let it go.
And
Where was the
we-
mask?
Let it go, Lori. Just let it go.
It was the highlight of my hockey career. Thank you.
Thank you, Lori. And I think we could probably stay here all night hearing hockey stories like that from all of these panelists and all of you. I appreciate you sharing that. Yeah.
I just want to begin by thanking all of you for everything you do. I benefited tremendously growing up and playing in AJH. John was my coach, Evan was my coach, Tim was my coach, Doug Kelso. So my love of the game started at the beginning, and then I was able to move back and coach my kids through the program, and now I've come full circle and I'm a ref. And
Important job.
every level, when you go from playing to coaching, Elizabeth, you'll remember this, it's a whole different part of the game. You love it just as much, but it's different. And reffing's the same way. But I want to make an observation about what's different now and back then. Back then, it obviously was a little bit more casual. And you didn't get pigeonholed at an early age to play a certain sport. And we all skied on the ski team, and we played on the hockey team. And I don't know if you guys coordinated with the ski team, but it seems like we had hockey games on Saturday and ski races on Sunday. And that was the McBrides and the Madsons, and everybody did it. So it was just different, and it was awesome. My favorite memory is definitely the Miracle on Ice, 1980. I think it was a Bantam or Pee Wee practice, and someone came over the loudspeaker and said, USA just beat Russia, and we all just started throwing our sticks and our gloves in the air, and it was incredible. I'll never forget it.
I'm so glad you brought it up. Thank you. Any other questions? Tim?
Do we know how many banners are out there hanging in the roof at the rink? I mean, it's spectacular. We look like an NHL organization there with all of the junior hockey, and the ladies especially have.
At the Lewis, you mean all of the
at
championships?
Lewis,
Mhm.
and I just wonder if anybody's got a handle on that number.
It's a lot.
Any statisticians in here? Well, since about the 70s until now. Probably
50.
I think the banners there start in the late 90s, early 2000s. So all the banners that are in Lewis are 2000s, present day, which doesn't count all the success in the 90s and the 80s and the 70s. And, yeah, and I think, the success is certainly a byproduct of the community and the fun that these kids have playing together. A lot of great memories.
One historical fact that John didn't mention was when it was called the Brown Ice Palace and changed to the Aspen Ice Garden. John's story on that, as I recall, was they changed it from brown ice because it sounded like yellow snow.
You made that up.
Thank you, Tim. Any other questions? All right, well, thank you all so much for coming, and thank you to our panelists.